What's going on, everybody? Cleepus Tech here, coming back at you with another video. In this video, we're going to be doing a quick comparison between the Motorola Moto G Play 2023 and the Samsung Galaxy A23 LTE. Now, keep in mind, this is not the Samsung Galaxy A23 5G. That is a completely different phone. The phone in this video is the 4G version. Now, as always, if you do end up wanting to learn more about either phone individually, definitely check out the description, where we'll be linking to several other videos about them, as well as some information about pricing, availability, and some of my favorite smartphone accessories. But with that being said, let's get into it. So with the Moto G Play 2023, we're getting a 6.5-inch 90Hz IPS LCD display with a 720p resolution, a PPI of 270, and a 20:9 aspect ratio. With the Samsung Galaxy A23, we're getting a 6.6-inch 90Hz PLS TFT display with a 1080p resolution, a PPI of 400, and a 20:9 aspect ratio as well. So for what they are, both phones do have pretty good displays, but in a couple ways, the Samsung Galaxy A23 does have a bit of an advantage. First of all, with the 1080p resolution versus again 720p with the Moto G Play, the A23 does have a much sharper, nicer looking image. So if you're going to be consuming a lot of content, specifically doing things where the image quality is a bit more important, like watching videos, maybe looking at photos on social media, for example, playing games, stuff like that. If you are doing a lot of that stuff, the A23 is definitely going to be a much better choice. And in addition to this, at 6.6 inches versus 6.5, while the difference really isn't that big, the A23 is a tiny bit larger. So in general, if you do want the better display between the two, the A23 will definitely be a better choice. That being said though, the Moto G Play, for what it is, doesn't really have a bad display. And if you are more of a light user, or maybe the image quality really isn't that important to you, then keep in mind, despite not being quite as good as the A23, with this display, things still are going to look fairly good. Now for storage, with the Moto G Play, this phone is getting 32GB of internal storage with microSD card expansion, and with the Samsung Galaxy A23, this phone has 128GB with microSD card expansion as well. So clearly here, the Samsung Galaxy A23 has a huge advantage, having quadruple the storage of the Moto G Play. So if you care about storage at all, I would definitely go for the Samsung Galaxy A23, because with the Moto G Play, not only is the storage on this phone significantly smaller, but I feel like at this point in 2023, 32GB just really isn't enough storage for pretty much anyone. Sure, maybe if you're a really light user who has like 5 apps, then you might at least get by, especially with the microSD card expansion. But honestly, still, if you plan on having any decent amount of apps, between the two, I would definitely go with the Samsung Galaxy A23, especially considering, even for what it is, despite this phone not officially being launched in the US, and therefore, of course, not having any crazy US carrier deals, for what this phone goes for factory unlocked, for having 128GB of internal storage, I feel like that alone honestly makes it worth considering. So again, definitely if storage is more of an important thing for you, with this much internal storage, the Samsung Galaxy A23 is obviously going to be a much better choice. For security features, both phones have fingerprint scanners. With the Moto G Play, it's right here on the back. And with the Samsung Galaxy A23, it's right here on the power key. In addition to this, keep in mind, the Samsung Galaxy A23 does have Face Unlock, whereas unfortunately, the Moto G Play doesn't. So if that is an important feature for you, which I feel like for a lot of people it probably isn't, but if you do really want Face Unlock, then you might want to consider going with the Samsung Galaxy A23. But starting with the Moto G Play, let's give the fingerprint scanners a try. There we go, one more time. And there we go. And now for the Samsung Galaxy A23. There we go, one more time. And there we go. So real fast and responsive, no issues at all. But again, just keep in mind the one difference here is that with the Samsung Galaxy A23, we are getting Face Unlock, whereas the Moto G Play 2023 unfortunately does not have Face Unlock. For the camera setups here, with the Moto G Play, we got a real nice looking hole punch design for the front facing camera. This camera is 5 megapixels. Then on the back, we got a triple camera setup with a 16 megapixel main camera, a 2 megapixel macro camera, and a 2 megapixel depth sensing camera. With the Samsung Galaxy A23, we got a water drop notch for the front facing camera. This camera is 8 megapixels. Then on the back, we got a quad camera setup with a 50 megapixel main camera, a 5 megapixel ultra wide camera, a 2 megapixel macro camera, and a 2 megapixel depth sensing camera. So as far as features go, both camera setups are pretty decent for what they are. But again, with the Samsung Galaxy A23, we are getting an ultra wide camera, whereas unfortunately, the Moto G Play, despite having a macro camera, doesn't have an ultra wide camera. So if you really do want that feature, the A23 will have a bit of an advantage. And when it comes to photo quality, again, the Samsung Galaxy A23 is going to be significantly better with a 50 megapixel camera, especially considering this is more of an entry level device. The photo quality we're getting here is definitely impressive. On the other hand, with the Moto G Play, honestly, despite not being quite as good as the A23, the photo quality with this phone actually really isn't bad either. So if you're really not using your camera a whole lot, maybe you're taking the occasional photo here and there, but really nothing too crazy, I do think this phone is going to get the job done just fine. And for like maybe the occasional Instagram photo every now and then, the photo quality is definitely good enough for that. To give you an idea of what they can do, here's a couple photos taken with the Moto G Play. I feel like for what it is, the photo quality here is actually pretty good. keep in mind this phone is really not meant for heavy camera use or anything like that. So if you're like, say, a content creator, for example, who's constantly taking a ton of photos, then yeah, you're gonna wanna get something with a better camera than this. But honestly, for the average user, again, for the casual Instagram photo every now and then, I don't see why this phone wouldn't get the job done there, because in general, despite not being the best camera ever or anything, which I definitely wouldn't expect from a sub $200 phone anyway, I do think the camera is pretty decent, and it's not like you'd see one of these pictures and go, that's a bad photo or anything like that. So yeah, in general, if you are more of a light casual user and you're really just taking a couple photos here and there, then this phone is honestly going to get the job done just fine. And now here's some pictures taken with the Samsung Galaxy A23, and as you can see, definitely a huge difference in quality here. The photo quality with the Samsung Galaxy A23 is clearly better. So if you are taking a lot of pictures and you're expecting higher quality, then I would definitely go with the Samsung Galaxy A23 over the Moto G Play, because while again the Moto G Play will probably get the job done for more casual users, if the camera is more of an important part of what you do with your phone, you are definitely going to be a lot happier with the Samsung Galaxy A23. Now, when it comes to RAM and processor, with the Moto G Play, this phone has 3GB of RAM with the MediaTek Helio G37 processor. With the Samsung Galaxy A23, this phone has 4GB of RAM with the Qualcomm Snapdragon 680 4G processor. So again, as you can tell by the name of the processor, this phone in my hand is not the Samsung Galaxy A23 5G. That is a completely different phone that I do also have plenty of videos about, so definitely keep that in mind. But still, between the two, when it comes to performance, despite not being a 5G phone, the Samsung Galaxy A23 4G is still quite a bit faster than the Moto G Play. And in fact, for what it is, I feel like this is one of the fastest 4G phones I've seen in recent times. Nowadays, when it comes to really fast phones, at this point, the days of 4G flagship phones are pretty much over. So any new higher end device is going to be 5G. So again, when it comes to 4G phones, the Samsung Galaxy A23 4G and the Motorola Moto G Stylus 4G are pretty much the fastest 4G phones you can get. Now, I do want to throw in, I'm not talking about older flagship phones, something like the iPhone XS Max, or I think the Samsung Galaxy S10, I can't remember if that's 5G or 4G, but those phones don't count. I'm specifically talking about newer phones. And again, as far as I know, at least when it comes to the larger manufacturers in the US, they don't really make higher end devices that are 4G anymore. But again, back to my main point here, the Samsung Galaxy A23 is going to be so much faster than the Moto G Play. So if you are going to be on your phone a bit more, or maybe you're doing more demanding activities like mobile gaming, for example, you are going to get a much better experience with the Samsung Galaxy A23, whereas with the Moto G Play, this phone is honestly on the slower side. And again, there is a huge performance difference between these two. That being said though, if you are more of a light casual user and you really just need a basic phone for the bare minimum, the Moto G Play, while definitely not being very fast, is still going to get the job done just fine. Now, I did run benchmark tests on these phones using Geekbench 5. And here are the results I got. So as you can see, again, there is a huge difference here. With the Samsung Galaxy A23, the performance is going to be significantly better. In fact, honestly, for what it is, again, performance-wise, this is a really impressive phone. And in my experience, it's actually even faster than a lot of mid-range 5G phones. So again, if you are going to be on your phone a bit more, then yeah, you are going to get a much better experience on the Samsung Galaxy A23. Whereas with the Moto G Play, activity-wise, this phone is really only going to be good for the bare minimum. Now for the batteries, both phones have really large 5000 mAh batteries, with the Moto G Play supporting 10W fast charging and the Samsung Galaxy A23 supporting 25. So definitely a big difference in charging speed here with the Samsung Galaxy A23, despite still not technically having the best fast charging ever. In my experience, this phone does charge up really fast, in fact, pretty much faster than I would ever need it to. Granted, for my personal use, I don't really care that much about charging speeds since I have my phone plugged in all day anyway, so take this with a grain of salt. The bottom line here is, the Samsung Galaxy A23 is going to charge up quite a bit faster, so if you do care about that, definitely keep this in mind. But on the other hand, with the Moto G Play, despite only technically having 10W fast charging, in my experience, the charging speeds are still perfectly fine. So as far as that goes, you're probably not going to have any issues with this phone either. And as far as the actual battery life and longevity goes, with 5000 mAh batteries, of course, it's going to be great for both phones. So if you're in a situation where maybe you're not always around a charger, but you still need something that's really going to last all day, either phone will be a great choice. And aside from battery life per charge, down the road, of course, in terms of longevity, phones like these that have really large batteries are definitely going to be a great choice. So if you like to get one phone and keep it for a longer time without having to replace it, definitely keep this in mind as well. Now, as far as software goes, with the Moto G Play, this phone does have Android 12, which honestly, in my opinion, considering this is a 2023 phone, is really too bad because at this point, obviously, we are on Android 13. So for a phone coming out in 2023, it would be nice to see it with the latest version of Android, but seeing how it went with the Moto G Pure, which is a pretty similar phone to this one, I imagine this phone will at least eventually get Android 13, but beyond that, I'm not so sure. With the Samsung Galaxy A23 on the other hand, despite coming with Android 12 originally, this phone does currently have Android 13, and knowing Samsung's software support, I believe it's also going to get Android 14, 15, 15 and 16. So in general, if you do care a bit more about the software and the long-term software support, then the Samsung Galaxy A23, or really any Samsung Galaxy A series for that matter, is definitely going to be a great choice for you. As far as other features go, keep in mind, the Samsung Galaxy A23 does have NFC, whereas unfortunately the Moto G Play doesn't. Now, despite being a little disappointing, especially considering at this point in 2023, contactless mobile payment services, which you do need NFC for, are becoming more and more widely used, I'm honestly really not surprised that this phone doesn't have it, because first of all, even though we have started to see a lot of really affordable phones that do have NFC, it's still not really that common. At this point, it's still more of a mid-range phone kind of thing. And in addition to this, in my experience, Motorola has been notoriously bad for not including NFC in their phones. In fact, there's only one phone I know of that's not a higher end phone, which would be the Motorola Moto G Stylus 5G 2022 that actually does have NFC. So again, am I really surprised? No. But at the same time, at this point in 2023, it is still a little too bad. But again, the Samsung Galaxy A23 does have NFC, so if you do like to use stuff like tap and pay, then you are going to want to go with the A23. But in conclusion, which of these phones is better? In general, in pretty much every way, the Samsung Galaxy A23 is technically the better device here, but that's not really surprising because in general, these phones are actually meant for two different purposes. On one hand, with the Moto G Play, this phone is really meant for super light basic activities, and really if you need something super affordable and you're not really going to be doing a whole lot on your phone, you just need something decent that works, and you don't really care about having a super nice display, a ton of storage, a really nice camera, or a bunch of features in general, then honestly the Moto G Play is going to be a perfectly fine choice, and especially considering this phone actually is offered through US carriers, you can get this phone for honestly next to nothing. Whereas with the Samsung Galaxy A23, despite being pretty inexpensive itself, since you will have to get it factory unlocked, you're definitely not going to get it for free. That being said though, on the other hand, with the Samsung Galaxy A23, we are getting a lot of stuff here. I mean, with 128 gigabytes of internal storage, again, I feel like that alone for the price definitely makes it worth considering. It also has a really nice display with a sharp 1080p resolution, a really good camera that takes great photos, features like NFC, the latest version of Android, and great software support, and honestly crazy good performance for what it is. And at this point in 2023, about a year after this phone was originally released, the price for it really isn't that bad. So if you are looking for an affordable 4G phone that has great performance, a really nice display and camera, and a really good amount of features for being more of an entry-level device, then in that case, I do think the Samsung Galaxy A23 will be a good choice for you. But again, if you're really just looking for something basic for the bare minimum, and you also really don't want to spend a ton of money on your phone, then in that case, the Moto G Play is going to be just fine. But this concludes my comparison between the Motorola Moto G Play 2023 and the Samsung Galaxy A23 4G. Again, if you want to learn more about either phone individually, definitely check out the description, where we'll be linking to several other videos about each of them, as well as some information about pricing, availability, and some of my favorite smartphone accessories. But that's it for this video. If you enjoyed it and found it useful, be sure to give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button. Don't forget to follow Kalipus Tech on Twitter and Instagram. And as always, I will see you in the next video.